So now we're going to take a look at charts and graphs. So we have all this data in our Google Sheet, and now we want to have some visual representation of some of that data. And charts and graphs that can be created in Google Sheets are a great way to do that. So let me just give you an example of how Google Sheets can create a chart for you. So there are two places that you can get to the charts. First of all, up here along your toolbar, you will see that there's an icon that says Insert Chart. And then also under Insert, you can find Chart as well. Now, if I don't know what data I want to collect, Google Sheets will sometimes create charts or graphs for you if you just click somewhere in your data. So I'm going to click somewhere in my data and I'm going to hit Insert Chart. Okay, immediately I get this chart that really does not help me at all because it doesn't really know what I'm looking for, and I didn't know what I was looking for, but this is definitely not it. I don't need to know how many times the first name appears in my spreadsheet, but that's the graph that it gave me. So you may get lucky and it may create a graph that you want, but oftentimes that's not the case. So let me show you how you can actually create a graph that will be helpful to you. So let me delete that out. And now I want to do a graph that is the student's first name versus their average for the class. So I'm going to click up here in my A column and I'm going to highlight this column. And then I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to click on the average column. And notice that it highlighted both of those columns. Now, when I click on my Insert Chart icon, I get a nice bar graph that gives me the average of each student, and then it gives me their names down here along the x-axis. So I have average on the y-axis and their first names. And I like that. That looks pretty good. But we can do some different things with this graph. So got my graph here. So first of all, I can move it around so it doesn't show up on top of my data if I want it to. Now I can look at some different options. So first of all, this is a column chart, but maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I want it to look like a line chart. That maybe doesn't do what I want. Maybe I'd rather it be a bar chart so I can see it in this direction. So you can choose the different types that you want and decide what's best and see how you want your data to appear. I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose this column chart again because I like this. And now let's take a look at some of the features that we can add to it so that we can customize it. So you can decide whether you want some stacking on there. And then you've got some other things like, we know the first name is on the x-axis and some things like that. But I'm going to go over to Customize. So Chart Style, I can change the background color. I can change the font of the text. I can change the chart border color. I can decide if I want it to be in 2D or 3D. Then I can add titles. So I can do a title. And again, you can change the font and the size. You can bold it. You can change that text color, whatever you would like for it to look like. On the title, then you can actually add a subtitle if you want. You can do the horizontal axis title, and so we can put the names go there. Then you could change the vertical axis title, have those things on there. The series, so you can see we've got average. You could change fill color, you could change line color. So you can change what you want it to look like. You can decide whether you want error bars on there. You can have data labels if you want to actually see the averages. Lots of different things you can do there. You can decide if you want a legend or not. So this one doesn't have one, but you could have one at the top. If you had multiple pieces of data, sometimes that's a good thing to have. You can edit the horizontal axis. You again can change the font, the style. You can do the same with the vertical. You can edit the grid lines and the tick marks to change the spacing of those. So lots of different editing that you can do for your graph. So if I have my graph the way I want it, It's looking good. I can drag it over here again so that it is off of my data and I can see both. But then there's some other options. So if I click off of my chart, then it kind of just puts it there and it is where it is. If I need to edit it again, I can go back and I can click on the chart. And it's going to kind of highlight it. And then you'll notice I have 3 little dots here. So if I need to edit the chart, I can go back and hit edit. I can always delete it. I can download it as an image that I want to maybe put into a slide deck or something like that. I can publish it, copy it, and I can move it to its own sheet. And I like to do this a lot of times. That moves it off of my spreadsheet of data, and it makes its own tab here. It'll say chart 1. You could always click and rename that, and so that you would have your class averages, and then that chart stays right here on its own. Okay, now the great thing about creating charts like this is if the data changes, then your averages are automatically going to update in your chart as well. So let's take Tom here, and let's say that we change his averages. So let's change some of his scores here. Okay, so now he has a 96.6 average. And if I click back over here, we can see that his average changed. So it will automatically update those charts and graphs as you update the data. I also wanted to show you how you can use your results from a Google form and turn those into charts and graphs. So here's my All About You survey that I created with my Google form, and this is my responses sheet. And so I can always create charts and graphs from this as well. So I'm just going to hit charts and graphs. Let's see what we get. So this automatically took the question, how do you get to school? And it created a pie chart here that shows me the count of who responded to how we get to school. So I've got that chart there. I could always change that to be a bar graph or a line graph or whatever I decide that I want. And I can customize that and change the titles and things as well. So you can use both data that you put into a Google Sheet and data that you collect from a Google form to create charts and graphs. The last thing I want to show you about charts and graphs is that we have this little Explore button down here. And so I'm going to click Explore, and this is actually going to give you some suggestions about things that you could do with your data. Now, it may not be what you want, but it may give you some ideas of things that might work, especially if you're not sure. Maybe you want to see averages, so you could click on, a histogram of averages, and it might give you some different suggestions. Different topics that might come up. You can also search if you're thinking, I'm not sure what I want. You could search and ask something about the data, and it's going to give you some ideas. So keep in mind, if you're not sure really what you want, this might be a good option to help you out as well. But there are tons of ways that you can plot your data in charts and graphs to really make it more visual for you and anyone else that's looking at your data.